Welcome. Let's continue on with our study of nouns. In Chapter 2, you were introduced to the concept of nouns, and you were introduced to nominative, the concept of cases, nominative, genitive, dative, accusative, and ablative. And you were presented with the endings a, ae, ae, am, a with a macron, ae, arum, and then I just flipped to pronouncing them, is, as. Let's do that correctly. I got distracted. Is, as, is. And I encouraged you to work with a word like puella, puelli, feminine, and put it into all of its forms. In other words, memorize puella, puelli, puelli, puellam, puella, puelli, puellarum, puellis, puellas, puellis. That way you can memorize them. You don't have to use puella. You can pick any word you want. But I chose puella just because that's the word I've used when I was learning this. What does it mean to use the declension? What does it mean to be the nominative case? What does it mean to be the accusative case? Let's use an example. In other words, if I see the word puellam in a sentence, it doesn't matter where in the sentence it is. That am ending is reserved for the accusative case. And as such, the accusative case is the direct object. So wherever puellam is in the sentence, that's the direct object. And that's helpful for us as speakers of English because we do depend on word order. Latin doesn't. So we need to know what slot to put that in a sentence. You know what? I sometimes think of it as one of those coin droppers. You know, you put the coin in there, and it does any coin you want, and it rolls down, and it will go in the appropriate slot. That's kind of what a Latin sentence is. You take all the words and you dump them in the slot, and the one that is in the nominative will fall into the subject. The verb what is the verb will fall into the verb one, and the one that's in the accusative case will go into the object. And that's kind of a way to think about it. I mean, I'm going to spend the rest of the semester giving you clues on how to do this, but in some ways that's an interesting way to think about it. So let's talk about these first declension nouns and what it means to be a first declension noun. First of all nouns, with three exceptions, and we'll get to those in just a second, with three exceptions, are feminine. And nouns are listed in the dictionary in this way. They are presented with their nominative case, the genitive case, and then the gender. And Latin nouns have three genders: masculine, feminine, or neuter. In other words, the first word that's listed in your book is fama. Fama, and I'm looking on page 17. Fama, fami, feminine. What this means is this is the nominative, this is the genitive. In other words, it gets you going. Fama, fami, fam, then you keep going. Fami, famam, fama with the macron. Fami, famarum, famis, famas, famis. What's the next one? Forma. Forma, formi, feminine. Same thing. Nominative, genitive, and then the gender. All of the ones in this chapter, with one exception, two exceptions, are feminine. And we'll talk about the exceptions in just a second. Just like in verbs, where we went to the second principal part to get our stem, the same way in Latin, in the nouns, that we go to the second principal part to get our stem here. Fama, forma. So F-A-M is your stem, and you're going to put all the endings on it. F-O-R-M is the stem, and you're going to put all the endings on it. Let's look at another one. Porta. Porta, portae, feminine. P-O-R-T-A-E, there we go. We've got our stem here by going to the genitive form of the verb, and our stem is P-O-R-T. Now I hear you. Wait a minute, Mr. Bessie. I'm looking at these. What possible difference does it make if I go to the first one or the second one? Because they're both exactly the same. For now. For now, they're exactly the same. What are you going to do when you get to a word puer, pueri, masculine, acer, acri, masculine? Yeah, you got to know you got to go to the second one. Don't worry about these right now. I am just proving the point to memorize the dictionary and exactly as the dictionary entry, because they're not always going to be so nice and neat in this way. Let's talk about adjectives. Number one, how were they listed in the dictionary? You have them here. They are all on page 18. Antiquus, antiqua, antiquum, magnus, magna, magnum. Why are there three forms? Nouns, they had two forms. Adjectives, they have three forms. And they don't have a gender. Exactly right. These three forms are the nominative singular masculine, nominative singular feminine, and the nominative singular neuter. In other words, if you see a word listed in the dictionary and it has two entries plus a gender, that's a noun. If it has three entries, no gender, that's an adjective. And it's going to, let me write this down and remember it always and forever. Adjectives. Put it on a flashcard if you're making flashcards. Adjectives agree with the noun they modify in case, I'm going to move this down here. Case, number, and gender. Adjectives agree in with the noun they modify in case, number, and gender. Remember that. So, let's see what I mean. What word do you want to pick? You want to pick pecunia, money, poina? Let's pick forma. There we go. We'll talk about forma, which is a form or a shape. You know what? Let's scratch that. Let's do fama. Whoa. Fama. Fami. Feminine. Let's decline this noun. And what I mean by decline the noun is I mean to put it in all of its forms. So fama, this is the nominative. Fama, fami. I'll write these here. Nominative, genitive, dative, accusative, ablative. Fama, fami, fami. Famam. Fama. With a macron. Long. Fami. Famarum. Famis. Famas. Famis. And I hear you, goodness gracious, we have to memorize all these forms of the word fame or reputation just to use it in a sentence? Yeah, because we've got two forms, singular and plural. In this particular one, we don't have any of either of those. But in Latin, yes, you have 10 forms for every noun of in a Latin sentence. You have 10 possibilities. And so, yeah, you've got to memorize all 10 of them. 5 singular, 5 plural. Now we're going to complicate things, because instead of the reputation or fame, we're going to talk about a great reputation or fame. And we're going to talk about a magnus. That's shorthand. In other words, it's listed in your book. Let me write this out as magnus, magna, magnum, and sometimes for shorthand, I believe in the back of the book, it's listed as the us, just so you know. But this is masculine, feminine, neuter. Let's put the endings on magna to talk about not just fame, but great fame. Adjectives agree in case, number, and gender, so fama, magna. If that were my subject, I would put both of them in the nominative case. Great fame is fantastic, whatever that is. Famai, magni. In other words, I am putting my endings I, arum, is, as, is. I'm putting my endings on this noun, on this adjective, to match the noun. And I've made a mistake on that one. Just getting ahead of myself. Famai magni, famam magnam. Fama magna with a long A. Famai magni. Famarum magnarum. That's fun to say. Famis magnis. Famas. What did I write there? Magnas. And famis magnis. Great. Now we have declined a noun with its adjective. And notice that the adjective agrees in case, number, and gender with the noun it modifies. You are never ever going to see fama magna. That's just not going to happen. Those two don't go together. In fact, I want to erase that out of your brain right now. Now, I can hear some of you, Mr. Bessie, I'm looking at this and you're making it far too complicated. The adjective and the noun look just alike. Well, how hard is this? Make the noun and the adjective look the same. That's good for now. Be happy in the simplicity of it in the first declension. Because guess what? Very, very quickly, they're not going to look the same. I know, and I laugh, but they're not going to look the same. Fama, magna, they all look the same now. And let's be happy with that today. Tomorrow, and perhaps in just a few minutes, we're going to change that. With that said, this is where I want to end things for this video right now. Practice. How am I going to learn this? Decline fully every single noun in the vocabulary, and then after you've declined every single one of them, pick a handful of them and make the adjective match the noun. Write them all out. It's good practice. It'll be helpful. And in just a minute, we're going to talk about the exception. But this is fine for right now. Have a great day.